Well, I guess it's time to get started, folks. Sure. Can everybody hear me? Well, today we have an important topic as we focus on small dollar loans. And they're important to homeowners in many ways, but they stop leaks, keep homes warm, keep the hot water going, and stop the porches from falling down. And I guess many of us in our career have been to ribbon cuttings. I certainly have been to a few in my life. They tend to be rather large buildings or a complex or some kind of tax credit deal or a big apartment building or some commercial building. But I think in my entire career over 40 years, I don't ever remember going to a ribbon cutting for a porch, for a water heater, or, a leaky roof. I mean, you just don't go to those. And so they don't come up on the political radar the way the large projects do. But nonetheless, they're really important and they're essential to the revitalization of neighborhoods. Here in Cleveland, and I suspect across the country, that there are many neighborhoods that really lack access to credit. And we're going to hear from people today who have made it their business to create credit opportunities for people who are in a hard place, who need a roof, who need the porch repaired, who need to paint on their house, the kind of things that make their lives easier and sustain the value of their property in the community, as well as the community at large. So today we're going to have a number of speakers, a national speaker, and I want to thank Dr. Dennis Keating from Cleveland State University, who introduced me to Eileen. And Eileen is with the Philadelphia Federal Reserve Bank. And I can't remember, are there 12 Federal Reserve banks? Is that right, Eileen? Yeah, 12 Federal Reserves. We have one here with pink limestone, and they work hard and play by the rules every day down there. And so today she is going to be presenting her research on small dollar loans. And she has drilled down to the MSA, not of Cleveland per se, but the Cleveland metropolitan area. And so we're going to start out with her talking about her research, why it's important, and why for a relatively modest amount of money, make a big difference in neighborhoods. And it's a question of getting credit out, and we'll hear later on in our presentation, people who do that kind of work. And sometimes making a loan for a water heater is as difficult as refinancing a house. So Eileen, I'll let you start out.
Thanks. I'll share my screen. That work all right? Can folks see that? Right. Well, I want to start by saying thanks to the Ohio Fair Lending Coalition for inviting me. I think this is a really important topic and a really under discussed topic. So my presentation today is going to focus on some recent work that I've done with my colleagues at the Philadelphia Fed and in partnership with some folks at PolicyMap, which is a web-based mapping service that some of you may be familiar with. And the initial goal of our project was to estimate the costs of addressing home repair needs in all occupied units nationwide, and then to also sort of explore the patterns and kind of the prevalence and severity of different repair needs. So initially we did this study and released a report that looks at this at the national level. But fortunately for our purposes today, we recently were able to replicate this analysis at the Cleveland metropolitan area level. So I can share some of those estimates with you as well. So before I get started, I always have to give this disclaimer whenever I give a public presentation, but the views expressed in this presentation are mine and those of my co-authors and do not necessarily represent the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia or the Federal Reserve System. I also wanted to take this opportunity to provide a little bit of background on the community development function at the Federal Reserve System. Sometimes folks are sort of surprised to hear that we do work in this space, but each of the 12 Federal Reserve banks actually has a community development or community affairs function. Most of these were created in the late 70s after the passage of the Community Reinvestment Act. And our role is to promote inclusive economic growth by focusing on issues that impact low and moderate income individuals and households. So that means covering topics like housing, as I'll be talking about today, but also things like workforce development, fair access to credit, and many others. So some of you may be familiar with my counterparts at the Community Development Department in the Cleveland Fed. And if you have not connected with them, I recommend that you do so. So I'll start a little bit with why housing quality is such an important issue for us to be talking about. And I know I probably don't have to really sell anyone in this room on this, but I think it's helpful to sort of go through some of the big reasons. So the first is that there's this really important relationship between quality and affordability. So housing affordability, especially rental affordability, are really kind of big dominant topics in the housing policy discussion, and rightfully so. They are very significant issues. But there's actually really a trade-off between sort of housing quality and affordability, which means they're linked in a really important way. So almost all households experience some sort of quality affordability trade-off. But for low-income renters and home buyers, finding a financially attainable unit can entail making sort of major sacrifices in the adequacy of their unit. So for a lot of low-income renters, there's often sort of few alternatives to under-maintained and potentially substandard units. And then for lower-income homeowners, the only units that are in their budget are potentially ones that are older and in worse condition. Additionally, unexpected repair needs can cause very significant financial disruptions for lower income homeowners. There was one survey that followed up with hundreds of low-income homeowners who had participated in one of the pre-purchase counseling programs that are really important and are really sort of widespread ways for folks to sort of get access to home ownership. But they followed up with these people within a couple of years of their purchases, and they found that about half reported experiencing unexpected maintenance costs. And nearly a third indicated that they had a repair that they needed to make, but they couldn't afford to do so. So thinking about sort of the sustainability of low-income homeownership, addressing kind of the repair needs issue is really critically important. Additionally, there's an abundance of medical and public health research that documents sort of the negative effects of living in poor quality housing, and that's especially true for vulnerable populations like children and older adults. This includes direct effects, so impacts on chronic health issues, injury hazards, things like that, but also indirect health issues. So it can contribute to financial stress, it can contribute to housing instability for lower income renters, and the financial strain of sort of not being able to afford a repair that you need to make to your home can be a really significant stressor. And these direct and indirect health impacts are linked to billions of dollars in societal costs annually. And that's, direct costs like healthcare spending, but also indirect costs like lost economic productivity and things like that. And then lastly, when we think about housing as sort of a vehicle for wealth building, which is a really important role for a lot of the communities that we work in. For a lot of repairs that may start out as sort of minor issues, if they are deferred because the homeowner can't afford to address those repairs, they can snowball into a much larger issue that then can begin to affect the value of their home, or might lead to code citations that sort of add to the financial strain of those kinds of challenges. And it also may increase some low-income homeowners' vulnerability to sort of predatory practices, right? So we know that a lot of low-income homeowners, we know a lot of homeowners of color have difficulty accessing conventional bank financing. And so there are lots of alternative financial service providers who might be there to fill in the gap. And we know that those are often not on great terms for those homeowners. So one of the big reasons I think that housing quality is sort of understudied and under-discussed relative to affordability is because there isn't as clear of a metric for it. So we know, a lot about housing costs, we know about rent, we know about home values, but we don't have as clear of a way of sort of thinking about housing quality and home repair needs. And so some of you may be familiar with the housing adequacy measure that's in HUD and Census's American Housing Survey, and it categorizes units as either adequate, moderately inadequate, or severely inadequate. And the more you sort of look at those criteria, the more you see that they're a little bit subjective, which isn't inherently a problem, but they do sort of miss a lot of things that we might think of as being significant repair needs. So when my colleagues and I were starting this project, we talked to a lot of folks who were working in the field, and they said, we could really use a measure of home repair need that is more kind of nuanced and has kind of direct practical relevance. So we settled on sort of a cost-based measure that both sort of provides an indicator of the magnitude of repair needs, but also provides information that's sort of directly relevant to developing policy and programs to respond to home repair needs. And so I'll just give a quick overview of how we calculate our measure. So to start with, the American Housing Survey actually contains some very detailed questions about different housing problems. There's about 40 different housing problems that households can report about their unit. And they also make anonymized individual responses to the survey available for researchers and for the public. And there's about 85,000 units in each kind of year of the American Housing Survey. So it's a large number of units that we can look at. We can also pull in important kind of contextual variables from different parts of the survey. So we know what kind of structure they live in, we know what kind of foundation they have, we know what kind of heating equipment they have, things like that, that really help us sort of narrow in on what the repair for that particular issue might be. And then once we had sort of a list of different potential repairs that we could assign to those units, we worked with RS Means, which is a pretty widely used construction cost data set, to estimate sort of an average cost of repairs for addressing that particular unit, addressing that particular repair need in that particular unit. So we're able to sort of match up repair costs with repair needs, and then sort of aggregate to the unit level, and then sort of aggregate that to sort of larger levels as we're able to with the survey data. So this is sort of an example of what that would look like in chart form. So if a household reports that they have at least one broken window, unfortunately, they're not specific about how many broken windows there are in the survey, but we assume that somewhere between 1 and 2 will need to be repaired for the typical household that reports that. You know, we assign that cost. If they indicate that they have a cracked foundation, we assign a cost based on the type of foundation they have and the size of their home. And then if they report a leak from their basement, since they already have sort of a basement related repair because of the cracked foundation, we assume that that sort of also accomplishes the goal of addressing that repair need as well. So we do have ways to sort of avoid redundant repairs potentially. So for this particular unit, we would add together the cost of fixing the broken windows and fixing the cracked foundation, and then have sort of like the total cost of repairing that unit. So that's sort of how the process, our cost estimation process works. So we think that this is sort of the best way to leverage the data that we have available in the American Housing Survey, but there are some limitations that I think are important before we get into sort of the high level results. So the first is that we don't have a ton of information about building materials in the American Housing Survey, so we're using sort of what are the most typical building materials and sort of betting that on average it'll kind of come out to sort of this typical average amount. The second is that a lot of the structural housing questions are not necessarily asked of people in multifamily units. So if you're in a multifamily unit, you might not know whether or not the foundation is cracked. So the American Housing Survey is not going to ask you about it. And additionally, they're not going to ask questions about things that the person in the household is not likely to know. So like things about like water contamination or sort of airborne health issues, things that we might care about, but that an individual living in a particular unit might not be able to speak to. They're not going to ask about that. And then they also only provide sort of a full set of answers for occupied units. So for vacant units, which as we know, the cost of addressing repair needs of vacant units can be quite high. We can't capture that with this particular method. So that's an important caveat as well. And the last thing I want to note is that we developed these cost estimates sort of pre-COVID, and we believe that they are good representations of what these costs would be in kind of normal times. But right now, as you may know, there's been sort of supply shortages as a result of different kind of pandemic related disruptions. It's become increasingly difficult to find contractors just because so many more people are at home and wanting to do kind of home improvement projects. So these are probably low for this particular moment in time, but in sort of normal times, whatever that might mean, these are probably a better approximation. So I'll start with the top line findings from our national report, which was released in late 2019. So at the time, we estimated that the national aggregate costs of addressing repair needs in all households was about $127 billion. Among lower income households, which were households which we defined as households that made 200% or less of the federal poverty level, they accounted for about 51 billion of that total. And then the average repair cost among households with repair needs was a little under $3,000. So looking more closely at low-income households that had repair needs, we found that many homeowners, so many owner-occupied units with repair needs, tended to be either larger families or older adults who were aging in place. Many had relatively low monthly housing costs, but had potentially sort of unaffordable repair needs. And then on the sort of renter side of the equation, we found that many lower income renters who had repair needs in their unit were single adults or single parents, particularly single women with children, who are sort of some of the most vulnerable people in the rental housing market. And many were also struggling with unaffordable rents, in addition to having sort of serious quality issues in their units. So this report was based on the 2017 American Housing Survey, which was the most recent available at the time. The American Housing Survey releases data every 2 years. And so in the 2019 survey, which is now available, they actually make it possible for us to break out results specifically for the Cleveland metropolitan area. So the next set of results that I'm going to show you are from that survey, from the 2019 survey, and they'll be specific to the Cleveland region. All right, so here are our top level findings for the Cleveland metro area. So we estimate that the total cost of repair needs in occupied units in the Cleveland region is about $780 million. Of that, about $300 million is in housing units that are occupied by lower income householders. And then the average cost of repair needs is around $2,700. So looking at the distribution of repair costs, we find that just under a third of households in the Cleveland metro area reported at least one repair need. For the vast majority, these repair needs are relatively modest cost. So most of them are typically below $5,000. About 1 in 20 units are in excess of that. And my guess is that many of the households who sort of show up at the different programs that are going to be discussed today are probably a little bit more in the 1 in 20 sort of more costly repair need category. But many have relatively modest costs that still might be more than an individual household can afford out of pocket, but are not necessarily these kind of huge dollar amounts. And then, oh, and I should mention, so renters were slightly more likely to report having repair needs, but on average, owner-occupied units tend to have slightly more expensive repair needs when you look at just households that have repair needs. And then for context, here's the share of households in the Cleveland metro area with repair needs compared to the 15 largest MSAs, which is something that is consistently provided in the American Housing Survey. As you can see, Cleveland is sort of in line with the national average, and the Cleveland region rather is in line with the national average and sort of in the middle of the pack of these metro areas. So now we'll look at how these repair needs sort of break out and vary by different household characteristics. So I've highlighted cells where the values are slightly higher than the overall value, and I've bolded the numbers where the differences are statistically significant. When you're dealing with sort of a subset of the broader sample, it gets a little bit harder to make kind of significant claim or to make claims about statistical significance because your sample size is a little bit smaller, but I've sort of tried to highlight sort of what are the main pieces here to make this table a little bit easier to read. So repair needs are notably more prevalent and more costly for households with incomes below the federal poverty level. While there wasn't a statistically significant difference from all households, it is significantly different from households that make more than 200% of the federal poverty level. So lower income households more likely to report repair needs, and at least for the lowest income households, more likely to report costlier repair needs. And then you can see there's a pretty stark and statistically significant racial disparity here as well. So Black and African American householders were significantly more likely than households overall, and white households to report having repair needs. And then additionally, in terms of repair costs, single women with children appear to live in the units with the most extensive repair needs on average. And that additional concerns with sort of children being a particularly vulnerable group to the negative impacts of housing quality issues. Definitely something I wanted to flag. And then looking at variation by unit characteristics, we can see that repair needs are slightly more common in smaller multifamily and single family units relative to sort of the larger multifamily units. And then as you would expect, repair needs are more common in older units and tend to be a bit costlier in those units as well. So looking at breaking this out by kind of the type of repairs that are more commonly reported, the most common categories by a significant margin are structural repair needs. So that's anything to do with sort of the basic systems of the house, and then leaks and mold. And because structural repair needs are typically much more costly, so they're things like, if you have a sagging roof, or you have a sagging exterior wall, or a crack in your foundation, these kind of big ticket repairs, those account for the majority of the aggregate costs of repairs that we estimate here. And if you look at the specific issues that are most common, you can see that the top 4 fall into one of those 2 categories. So it's cracks or holes in walls or ceilings, leaks from basements, leaks from roof, and cracks in foundations. And I will say the cracks or holes in walls or ceilings, that question, the way it's phrased, they ask if the crack is wide enough to fit the side of a dime in the crack. So it's a little bit more than just there's a crack in my plaster or something like that. So far, everything I've described has been sort of these high-level summary statistics, but from a program design perspective, I think it is really important to have sort of a sense of the types of households who may be struggling with housing quality issues. And so for the next couple slides, I'll talk about some examples from the American Housing Survey. So actual households, individual responses, they're anonymized, but they are in the Cleveland region, and talk a little bit about sort of the context that might inform how we think about serving these households. So one of the findings from our national analysis was that older homeowners who are aging in place make up a pretty substantial segment of lower income households with repair needs. And so our example household here is sort of in that mold. So the householder is an 85-year-old woman. She lives with her now adult child in a home that was built in the 1980s. She's lived there for 30 years. She's paid off her mortgage. It's the only home she's ever owned. And her income puts her a little bit below the poverty level. So because she's paid off her housing costs, paid off her mortgage rather, her ongoing housing costs are relatively low, but the unit has some relatively extensive repair needs. So she's indicated that she's paid thousands of dollars in the past on making repairs to her home, and she still has close to another $2,000 in additional repair needs that would need to be made, and sort of factoring in sort of the fact that the household's income still puts them below the poverty level. That's might not seem like a huge amount in terms of repairs you need to make to a house, but is a significant sum to a very low income household. So our next household is sort of at the opposite end of their home ownership journey. It's a family that just recently purchased a house. So it's a married couple in their late 20s. They have 2 young children. They're first-time home buyers. They bought a house that was built in the 1920s. And this sort of speaks to sort of that concern that for a lot of lower income folks who want to become homeowners, the only households that are sort of financially attainable might be ones that have certain issues. So they live there with their 2 young children, and there are some significant and costly kind of structural repairs. Their income puts them between 150 and 200% of the federal poverty line. Not as low income as the previous example, but still, looking at a $6,500 repair might still require some assistance. And then next, we're going to take a quick look at renters living in units with repair needs. So the perspective is a little bit different with renters, right? Because they're not necessarily responsible for the repairs to their units. So it's more of a question from a policy perspective of, are they in a position where they can get their landlord to make those repairs, or do they have the ability to move to an apartment that is potentially in better condition? Looking at our first example here, the householder is a single woman in her late 20s with 2 young children. She lives in a kind of smaller, older structure built in the 1940s, I believe. And it's now operated as a affordable housing. So she's not responsible for any costs beyond her utility costs. She moved in there within the year prior to the survey and indicated that she had been forced to move from her previous home by her landlord. So that could be a formal eviction, that could be an informal eviction, or some other sort of challenge. As I mentioned, she has 2 young children. She does not have any income. She is enrolled in a post-secondary education program. There are several issues in this home that you would think would be sort of problematic for a household that has young children. So potentially health-linked housing quality issues. And when you think about, sort of, is this person in a position to move to a better quality unit? The answer is probably not, right? She's in a very precarious housing situation as it is. So that is kind of the nature of the concern with a lot of the quality issues in renter housing units. And then the last example of a renter household with repair needs is a renter household living in a single family home. And I think that's important to note because a lot of people conflate renters and sort of multifamily structures, but more than a third and close to like 40% of renters actually live in single family homes. And oftentimes it is people in household situations like this. So this is the householder here is a woman who's in her mid-30s. She lives with her partners and her 4 kids. So a single family home is probably the size of unit she would need to accommodate that family size. Both of those adults work, but their income is still below the poverty level for a household of this size. And again, we see sort of several housing quality issues that would be concerning for a unit where there are children present. So mold, peeling paint, rodents. And this household actually happens to have a voucher, which is potentially made it possible for them to afford this house, and in theory sort of increases their agency in finding another unit. But at the same time, voucher households might have difficulty finding kind of single family homes that are large enough for a family of this size. So I'll wrap up by talking about sort of some of the ways these findings can help inform policy and practice around home repairs. I will say there are folks on this call who have much more experience than I do actually designing and implementing these programs, so I will try to be brief on this point. But we'll start with homeowners because I think that's sort of like the easier challenge to wrap your head around. So while we find that most low-income homeowners have relatively modest repair needs, the average repair cost is still higher than what a lot would be able to afford to pay for out of pocket. A lot of medium and long-term owners might have enough equity that they could, in theory, kind of finance those repairs. But as I think everybody on this call knows, they face a lot of barriers to that. So we did an analysis in the Philadelphia Feds district on access to home improvement loans, and for several groups of low income, or in several parts of our district, the denial rates for low income householders of color were in excess of 70%. So very difficult for many to access kind of conventional home repair loans. And additionally, the amount that's needed to cover their repair needs, it could be too small for most lenders to really be interested in providing a loan of that size. And then homeowners might also find sort of obtaining that kind of financing too cumbersome relative to other options, even though some of those other options, so things like alternative financial services, we know are not a good deal for them. So several barriers to financing, and that's why sort of the programs you'll hear about later today are so important for filling that gap. But it's also, I think, important to note that to some extent, grants have to be part of the equation here. There's a lot of households that have severe repair needs who just don't have the income to support a loan. There's a lot of households who are probably reluctant to take on more debt, especially if they're an older homeowner who has already sort of paid off their mortgage. And so, many municipalities will offer grant programs to these households. Sometimes they can come from kind of a bunch of different programs that have a bunch of different goals and a bunch of different sort of eligibility requirements, but to the extent that those can be aligned, those can be used to meet that need. And then sort of given, thinking specifically about sort of our newer low-income homeowners who are purchasing homes that are likely to have repair needs in the near future, one thing that it might be useful for housing counselors who have this issue on their radar is to start to think about how they can integrate information about kind of different options that might be available for low-income homeowners to make repair needs once they are in their units and they sort of encounter these challenges. From the same study that I referenced earlier that followed up with the low-income homeowners who had participated in the pre-purchase programs, a lot of them indicated that they would appreciate programs that taught them how to make sort of more minor repairs so that they didn't kind of escalate to a point where they needed to bring in a contractor and might be expensive to deal with. So those are sort of things to think about as kind of preventative measures for new homeowners. And then I'll conclude with renters, which is, I think, as I mentioned, sort of a different challenge since it's not necessarily the person who occupies the unit who's responsible for the repairs. So strategies for dealing with rental housing quality issues are often kind of focused on the property owner and are sort of more regulatory in nature. So things like code enforcement, which are important, but also without kind of some intentionality can have unanticipated and undesired kind of negative impacts on renters and in socially kind of disparate ways. So the most vulnerable renters in the worst quality stock may not be well served by a purely kind of code enforcement approach to this challenge. And additionally, sort of knowing that the majority of units are of renter units, are renter occupied units with repair needs in particular, are in these kind of smaller structures. So either single family homes or smaller multifamily units. Those structures might be owned by property investors who are, mom and pop landlords, not necessarily super sophisticated property managers, and they might benefit from some affordable financing and some technical assistance as well to sort of make those units better for the renters who occupy them. And so I will leave it there. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I will put a link to the original national report in the chat as well.
Wow. Does anybody want to raise their hand or have a question for Eileen? Pretty comprehensive report. The credit issue. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it's Sally. I just wanted to ask Eileen, that was a really great presentation. Thank you so much. I'm wondering how much of a deep dive you did on code enforcement related to destabilization of these tenants, because I find in my own practice that what ends up happening is that if we find out that a property has significant code enforcement issues and then we go after the landlord, oftentimes this results in the tenant becoming displaced by the housing authority, giving move-in papers, and they can't find another house. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. We obviously have to enforce the code, but what is there a consequence to the low-income tenant?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have not personally done much work looking at code enforcement and outcomes from code enforcement, but a lot of recent research that takes kind of a critical eye to it has identified those problems. So there's the issue that a lot of units that are in disrepair are ones that are housing sort of however adequately our lowest income renters, right? And so going in with sort of an aggressive code enforcement response, you do put those households at risk of potentially retaliation. But even if you have sort of a relatively well-intentioned property owner, if they get stuck with a bunch of code violations that they can't pay for, that still can kind of lead to displacement of that particular tenant. And so it's a super, super hard balancing act. I think it is really I know that the emphasis of this program is probably more on the home ownership side and the getting the capital to low-income homeowners, but there is sort of also this gap in affordable improvement lending for landlords who serve a lot of these neighborhoods as well. So I think that's an important piece of the puzzle, but it's one that's, I think, harder to solve because you also don't want to subsidize a landlord who's then going to turn around and hike rents, right? So yeah, the renter end of it is really interesting and really thorny, and there's a lot of kind of policy trade-offs.
Eileen, did you look at different possible lending institutions as opposed to commercial banks. What about savings and loans or employee savings institutions? Any possibility of other institutions that might be more conducive for small loans for this?
Yeah, that's a really great point. So the research that I did looking at access to home improvement loans, we used the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act data set, which covers lots of financial institutions, but not certain kinds of financial institutions. So if they are covered in the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act requirements, then they would have been included in our analysis. And then we didn't actually break out by kind of type of financial institution, but that is an interesting question.
Isaac?
Yes, thanks again, Eileen, for that presentation. Really interesting. I guess as someone who lives in an older home and has gone through a fair amount of sort of minor to major repairs, we know we got a lot of people from housing counseling agencies and a lot of experts on the call. Those numbers seem a little off to me. I know you use RS means, but given the amount of what you're calling sort of minor repairs and a relatively small dollar amount, I was wondering if that's actually been ground truth with contractors, or whether it's in the Philly MSA or in Cleveland. I just think we like to throw around numbers quite a bit, and they're not really accurate for how much this stuff costs, especially if you need someone on site to make those repairs.
Yeah, good question. So I guess a little bit more detail on the RS Means data set that we used. So it's from their residential contractor remodeling and repair kind of data set. And we worked with the folks at RS Means who have sort of expertise in this area to try to identify what are reasonable cost interventions that would address the kind of issues that we can identify in the American Housing Survey. There's always the possibility that we're underestimating the severity of the issue that's reported in the survey, trying to take sort of an average and kind of conventional conservative approach to kind of estimating that number. But we did work closely with RS Means to do that. I can't say that we have specifically gone out and talked to residential contractors and said, does this number look right to you? But we've presented this, I guess, several times to different kind of home repair organizations, and also to the Harvard Joint Center convenes sort of a remodeling futures group of folks who do sort of not just repairs, but also kind of more high-end improvements and stuff like that. And we've shared this work there as well. But yeah, I definitely see your point. It's a little harder than it sounds to go from question in the American Housing Survey to estimate of the cost of that repair. But where we ended up was that sort of on average, we feel like it's probably a good ballpark estimate.
Okay, thanks. It would be interesting just as a follow-up if you went out and just sampled a handful of homes that needed repairs locally and compared and contrasted. Thanks.
Mm.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I guess we should go on to our next speaker, who's in the banking business, who formerly was a banker and is now a banker again. Greg Peralka, who is with the Executive Vice President of CHN's Housing Partnership, which is, I guess, our alternative bank here in Cleveland, and has been involved with making small dollar loans. And so, Greg, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chip. Appreciate it. And I'm going to have Catherine share her screen with our presentation. So thank you. Great to see many familiar names within our panel discussion today. And aren't you glad if you're in Cleveland that you didn't have to drive somewhere to see this, right? You could just walk down the hallway after getting up and going into your kitchen to participate. So great to be with you today as we talk about these small dollar loans. And as Chip mentioned, I joined just most recently with CHN Housing Capital after working in mortgage banking for the past 30 years. And we are doing some great things here at Capital. We are the lending arm for CHN Housing Partners, which has been around since 1981. And if we go to the next slide, Catherine will be able to share. And one more, we're going to talk through. Go ahead and click through again. So we were founded as the Housing Capital arm back in 2019. And the Housing Partners Group moved over some assets and 115 loans for us to service within the group. And so we are serving the community's financial needs through down payment assistance, home repair loans, home purchase mortgage loans, and then also having access to counseling and education. We'll talk more about that in the slides to follow. Go ahead. This is our executive leadership team, and you'll be able to also have a copy of this presentation. If you go to our website, which is www.chnhousingcapital.org, you'll see more information within our team and within our group. Next slide, please. So just as a high level, and then we'll go into individual slides for these particular programs, but we are offering right now a down payment assistance program through the City of Cleveland, which is our Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative down payment assistance. We also have a Cuyahoga County down payment assistance program. We're right now in the midst of talking to the City of Lorain, and it's under development of bringing a DPA, hopefully during the summertime. That's our goal, to be able to have that particular down payment assistance piece there. Our home repair we have right now through Cuyahoga County, and actually both of our programs are through Cuyahoga County, but the Cuyahoga Land Bank most recently has been managing the funds that we received for this year in 2021, and we'll talk more about that. And then we have our first mortgage loan products. We just rolled out 2 weeks ago our small dollar first mortgage, which is called the Believe Mortgage. And we'll talk to that. And then we also have our year 16, 2 different products there through a loan fund. This is where we have a lease to purchase for individuals that have been in a CHN Housing Partners home for really in the 13th year. We have counselors that start talking to them about home ownership. And then in the year 16, we are selling them the home itself and providing a small dollar loan for them. And in many cases, when they're going into that home, they are actually paying less than what they were paying in rent. And they can pay off their mortgage within 5 years. So they have instant equity. And it's a great program that we're providing within the community. So we've done that with our borrowers as well as with Evergreen Cooperative, which is a relationship that we've had with them for a few years. Next slide, please. So the first, as we were talking, is the MNTI, that Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative. And this is through the City of Cleveland. We'll provide a $20,000 down payment assistance. There's no income restrictions for buyers to participate. They must have the ability to secure a first mortgage from a private lender. And then they must also occupy the home for a period of 5 years after the sale. The DPA will be provided to the buyer as a 0% deferred second mortgage, which will be forgiven after 5 years. So again, that's why you need to be in the property for the 5 years after you've purchased it. And right now we're offering this within the Glenville Circle North neighborhood. So the homes have to be fully renovated or new construction. And we're talking to a couple of other communities, parts of Buckeye, as well as Clark Metro, to see if there might be a need there as well. Next slide, please. So our Cuyahoga County Down Payment Assistance Program, another one that you can combine with a lender's first mortgage. An applicant can qualify up to $13,395, which is 10% of the home purchase price. And so the purchase price, maximum being $133,950. And the buyer must be at or below an 80% area and median income to participate. And they must also complete the home buyer classes or home ownership classes prior to closing. That's a great change that the county worked with us on, is the fact that the buyers no longer have to have their home ownership classes prior to purchase agreement. So that was causing some heartburn for our realtors and for borrowers, because they would go into contract and not realizing that they would already have to have their homeownership certificate in hand. And so that would eliminate, many of our buyers coming in for this program. So now they can actually apply, they can go into contract with a realtor, And then we just ask for the certificate as a at-close condition. The other thing that the county worked with us on as well, this used to be a program for only lenders that were OFA approved. And so we've removed that requirement. And so if you're a lender with an active NMLS, which is most lenders today, you can participate in this program as well. Buyers must not have owned a home in the past 3 years. And then the eligible homes can be located in any of the 51 eligible Cuyahoga County communities. So if a community has a down payment assistance program, this would not be eligible within that particular city. Next slide, please. And this is the Believe mortgage, the small dollar loan I was referring to. We have signed a corresponding agreement with a large lender. And so what we're doing now is we're providing first mortgages from $20,000 up to $250,000 in regards to loan amount. And eligible buyers, they're not required to be first-time home buyers, but they will require a down payment as low as 3%. And they must complete the first-time homebuyer classes. Even if they're not a first-time homebuyer, we're asking them to complete that particular class for this particular product. They're not required to pay any type of PMI, no private mortgage insurance. And we also are considering low credit scores for these particular borrowers. They can also take advantage of a second mortgage home repair loan, so another small dollar loan, if you will. So if you combine it with the Believe mortgage, while we're actually in the purchase process with the home buyers, if that property needs some repairs for soundness, for safety reasons, then we will give them a second mortgage simultaneously with the Believe mortgage up to $8,000. And so they can use that for any repairs that are necessary at the time. Right now, these first mortgages are eligible for Cuyahoga or Lorain counties. Next slide. And this is our home repair loan that we were talking about. So Cuyahoga County has given us dollars last year in 2020 that will run through 2022. And then we also received dollars this year. And as I said before, that the Cuyahoga Land Bank are managing on our behalf. These home repair loans, they'll provide a 0% deferred second mortgage payable upon the resale of the home. But eligible homeowners can qualify up to $20,000 for these eligible repairs, and they can be at or below 120% AMI, depending on the program. Our other program is 80%. So what we do is we ask homeowners to go to our website, and they can enter their information in a actual income calculator, and it will instantly tell the person of whether or not they qualify for this particular program. Homeowners must be current with their county taxes. If they're in a payment plan, that's fine, but they have to be current within their payment plan as well. And then eligible homes are located in Cuyahoga County, must be single family, owner occupied. And again, the repairs need to be for safety and soundness reasons. So you can't remodel your kitchen or bathroom, unless of course it is for safety reasons. But what we're looking at, similar to what Eileen shared within her report, it's for the structural pieces. Many of these loans that we received applications on have been for the roofs, have been for plumbing, electrical, for driveways, walkways. So again, for safety reasons. Next slide, and I'm going to end there for any questions that you may have in regards to the program shared. And those are to the websites that you can also go to see more about our products.
Colin?
I may have missed this, Greg, but for the county-wide down payment assistance, is the same requirement for the property to be fully rehabbed or new construction?
No, not on that. That's, Colin, for that particular, on the county down payment assistance, owner occupied, and again, it's really what that comes down to for the $13,395 is the first mortgage lender, whatever their requirements are, they can combine this particular down payment assistance with their first mortgage.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dennis?
Could you tell us what the default rate is on the home repair loans and what happens when people find out that they need more money than they borrow to actually complete the repairs?
So what we're doing, Dennis, actually on the default piece, we have not seen any type of default even within our capital portfolio, to be honest with you. We're at literally less than 1%. I mean, since I came here, it's very minuscule in regards to the actual default rate for any of our products, to be honest with you. What we're doing is that we're actually working. We have a construction manager that works with the borrower in regards to obtaining bids. So they're being told up front, you know, what it actually is going to look like in regards to the total cost of repairs. So we haven't had anything yet that has said it's going to be over the $20,000 amount, right? And so if it is, you know, we are sharing with them that they would have to have out-of-pocket costs. So if that's the case, we have seen some borrowers say, well, then we're only going to do X in regards to the repairs right now. And so they'll go to the ones that are most serious within the home. But again, I don't think I've seen anything that has really maxed it to the point where we haven't been able to include it within the $20,000. That's a great question.
So far, so good.
Yeah, exactly.
Other questions for Greg? So how much capital did you get from the county?
So the first tranche of money, Chip, we had received $1 million from them from 2020. 880,000 of that is actually towards the home repair loans that we're able to do. And so if everyone maxes it out at 20,000, we can do up to 44 loans with that first tranche of money. For this year, we received 800,000. So we can do, if it's 20,000 as the max, we'll be able to do 40 loans total for the year. And so that's a great point that you raised, because obviously the dollars are going quickly and it is first come, first serve. And as long as we have those funds, we're providing those loans right now. So very busy, obviously, as we go into the home buying season, as the weather's getting nicer, we've seen definitely an uptick in applications for this particular program.
So one of the things I know in Cleveland, a lot of people don't have Wi-Fi. We've been trying to do a doorbell campaign in Buckeye. I noticed that one of your projects was to have people go on the web and calculate their costs and stuff like that. Do you have a 211 phone call, or is there a way of connecting with low-income people who don't have Wi-Fi?
Yeah, definitely. So they're able to contact us through our toll-free number, and if they don't get someone directly, they leave us a message. We will get back to them within 24 hours. We have a community development officer as well as a loan officer on staff that will help them and walk them through the process.
Any other questions for Greg? Hopefully you get some more money from the county. Maybe we can, get some of the Quicken Loans money.
We're right now talking to many funders about the need of these small dollar loans for home repair, because it's so popular, and so hopefully we'll be seeing more dollars come through the door.
Okay, our next speaker, and hopefully she is here, Sarah Parks Jackson, who works for the county. And there you are, Sarah, welcome.
Yes.
And known to many as the contracting specialist at Cuyahoga County, waiting for your check to come from Cuyahoga County, Sarah Parks Jackson. So Sarah's going to tell us a little bit about the HELP loan program, which has been around. I remember when it started at the treasurer's office with Jim Rokakis, and now it's over at the county community development department. So Sarah, take it away.
Right. Thanks, Chip. I am, of course, Sarah Parks Jackson. I'm the interim deputy director for housing and community development for Cuyahoga County. And I know I'm supposed to talk about the HELP program, but I also wanted to highlight some of the funding that we provide. That Greg already mentioned is our federal CDBG dollars that we have provided to CHN for the down payment assistance program, as well as our home repair program. So when you see the differences where it's 51 communities, that's our CDBG dollars, and with the down payment as well, because we are limited with those funds to what we call the urban county communities. And then also with the housing plan, the funds that came from the land bank, we worked with the land bank on selecting who would be the administrators of those programs and that money to ensure that we could cover Cuyahoga County residents who were in need and also who were above that 80% threshold. So on CHNs, a lot of the products, you'll see where the threshold goes to 120%. So I see a lot of names that I recognize, and I'm glad you guys invited me to be here with you today. The Housing Enhancement Loan Program, which is HELP, actually began in about 2009 under then County Treasurer Ratakis. It provides lower interest loans and has done so for the past 12 years to homeowners in Cuyahoga County. The program provides an interest rate that is 3% below the normal rate. So as you can expect, our numbers ebb and flow based on what the current interest rates are. When the program started, we had, I believe, 5 or 6 banks that were participating, and now we're down to Key. Every now and again, we'll get an application from Huntington, but most specifically, Key Bank is still moving forward with providing these loans to residents of Cuyahoga County. There is no income limit on the HELP loans, and that was one of the things that was of interest to all of us back then, because there were so many people in the community who have an income that is higher than the 80%, but still need some assistance getting financial help with making repairs to their homes. The residents apply through the bank. The minimum loan is $3,000. And for the past 3 years, for 2017 to 2019, we have approved 1,049 loans. The total lending is $3,227,478, with the average loan about $30,000. The highest individual city usage of the program is the city of Cleveland. And as we continue to market and get information out to people, we hope to see that usage go up. The suburban communities are using it as well, but of course, Cleveland residents are the most prevalent users of the HELP loan right now. As interest rates creep back up, we will see the interest in the program creep back up because of the 3%. So I will open the floor for questions from anyone.
Hi, Sarah. My name is Allison Urbanic. I'm with Lakewood Alive. It's nice to see you. I do have a question about the value of the properties and using the HELP loan. So there is a cutoff, I believe, for the limit of the value of the home in order to qualify for the program, if I am reading it correctly, like a maximum, I think, of $275, I believe.
I think you're correct, yes.
So in Lakewood, we are experiencing a major housing issue here with increasing values, which many people think is wonderful. But as a advocate for low, moderate income people, I do think it's challenging at times because we are losing a lot of our friends in the community. But what I'm hearing from some of our residents is that they're not being able to utilize the program due to the increased value of their property, just based on the tax values that keep rising here in our community. So I'm not sure if that's anything that's been brought up, or if anyone else is experiencing these things, but we are trying to keep as many affordability options available to our residents. And it's a complicated issue, but just wondering if it's something that you've heard of through your office.
I have not, but I will certainly take the information back to Paul Herdick, who is currently the interim director for the Department of Development, and Chris Murray, who is our county treasurer.
Great, thank you very much.
I Hi, Sarah and Sally. I just had a question about bank participation and if any other banks, I think Huntington jumped in, but are there any other banks that are close to agreeing to participate in the program? And what have those conversations been like?
Not to my knowledge. I have not been involved in those conversations. That's more Paul and specifically Chris Murray as the county treasurer, since we do put a certificate of deposit at the bank if they agree to lower the interest rate. So I would have to get with Chris and with Paul to find out if they are having additional discussions with other banks. I know at one point for the banks doing the 3% when the interest rate was already low was just not cost effective for them, so they backed out.
Bill Starr.
I think you basically were answering my questions. It was about bank participation and, you know, why we've seen fewer banks. My understanding is that the default rate is very, very low, and banks still have HMDA requirements to, you know, lend and within the community, and why more banks are just not interested in participating, given the fact that there clears to be need for this program and interest in the program.
I would agree, but I do think that we have, the banks are looking also at their bottom line, and I know there's been discussions with the other banks, but again, what I would urge you to do, Chip, is to send out an invite to Director Murray for your next brown bag, and ask him some of these questions about those discussions, because he has been involved in all of those discussions with the banks as to their participation.
So I have a quick question. You know what your denial rate is with this program?
We don't generally deny unless it's a luxury item. The banks are using their credit criteria to determine whether they're going to make the loan. And then once they have determined that they will make the loan, they send it to us for approval or sign off.
So you don't get it before?
No.
Any other questions for Sarah?
There's a question in the chat asking if there's an average interest rate after subtracting the 3%.
No, because the bank sets their interest rate based on their criteria. So it can change based on circumstances and the bank's actual criteria for lending.
Okay, I think we're, Sarah, thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Nice home there. Okay, next presenter is Keisha Allen, who runs the Home Repair Resource Center and the infamous Challenge Fund, which has been around for, what is it, 42 years, Keisha? I can't remember.
48.
48 years. And this was like an innovative idea 48 years ago. And I remember the phrase that they always used: unbankable people need a home improvement loan. And started out with the infamous Cleveland Trust in the Rockefeller building of all places. So they've been doing a lot of loans for a long time and helping a lot of people. So Keisha, talk about home repair loans and the Home Repair Resource Center.
Thank you, Chip. And thanks to everybody on the call. See a lot of colleagues here who I'm sorry, I've been on my soapbox for probably what the past 5 to 8 years about this. So I've been championing this and talking about this for some years. So for those who've kind of heard about this, I'm sorry, but for all those who haven't, I'd like to kind of share a little bit about what the folks who created our agency kind of wanted to get ahead of and start, and kind of where we are now in our progress, and kind of fitting in between what Greg was talking about, as well as Sarah, and what the county has been doing and what we've been doing for about 50 years. So if Catherine, you can throw up my slides, please. I am Keisha Allen. I'm the executive director. I've been the executive director since 2016. We've been working really hard to really preserve and support the residents of Cleveland Heights, homeowners as well as renters, for almost 50 years now. We'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary later this year. So we've been doing this for some time. When we talk about the help loan being in existence since the 80s, as well as what CHN has been doing. Love my colleagues and my partners, but we've been doing it a little bit longer. So yeah, we can get to the presentation, Catherine. So Home Repair Resource Center, what we, our mission statement is we work to empower homeowners to maintain their homes for sustainable and diverse communities. And through our mission, we strive to promote community recognition for the need to preserve, maintain, and upgrade the area's older housing stock, right? When you talk about Cleveland Heights, Shaker Heights, Euclid, we're starting to move upon century-old housing stock where homes were built in the 1920s. And in a place like Cleveland Heights, where we really would like to preserve our housing stock and not really bring on too much new development, we really try to focus on the home and make sure the house is our client and preserve it as best as we can. We also like to address the forces that negatively impact maintenance for the housing stock. Through education, advocacy, and programming. We are part of several advocacy groups, and through our education, our repair education, our home buyer education, and our programming that really, really kind of embraces the client, right, as well as the home, to kind of help them walk through each phase of home ownership. We like to strengthen the financial management skills of homeowners, being that we have a full suite of HUD certified programming from pre-purchase all the way to foreclosure. And I'll talk a little bit about this as we go on, but we like to guarantee bank loans for homeowners who need assistance, and like to combine and layer as many benefits as we can so we can achieve a complete repair. And we provide tools and instructions and other resources that will help homeowners. We don't do for the client, we do with the client. So we really see how that relationship building adds to a homeowner's pride in their community and promotes a willingness for them wanting to do repairs. And with the verdict yesterday and everything that's kind of going on in the world right now, it's kind of awesome to think about how the agency was created in 1971. Folks from the Forest Hill Church Housing Corporation in 1971 really wanted to curb the community's fears from everybody from Cleveland moving into the inner ring suburbs. And rather than, bunker down and shun folks away, they really embraced the idea of promoting a diverse and integrated community. And they wanted to make sure the people who were here, as well as the people who came here, understood that Cleveland Heights is a prideful place that really wants to preserve and take care of their housing stock. So it was pretty cool that through church parishioners from the Forest Hill Church, they were able to develop our organization today. Next slide, please. So we do it through a variety of programming and services that we offer. Some of the things just to highlight is that we also provide the down payment assistance program for Cleveland Heights. Cleveland Heights is an entitlement city, so we do receive specific CDBG funds, and we work very closely with our CDBG director, Brian Iorio at Cleveland Heights, to make sure that we are, providing all the services that we can throughout the process. We also offer our tool library, which is kind of one of the cool things, 1,000 tools, all online in a digital catalog, and our home repair education classes. And we'll go to the next slide to talk about the meat and potatoes of this program. So in 1973, Forest Hills Housing Corporation created a loan guarantee program. And at that time, they called it the Challenge Fund. And they were wanting to ensure homeowners access to repair financing, right? A lot of times people were going to banks and getting turned down, and they felt like this was a threat to being able to preserve the housing stock. So with a little bit of seed money, they were able to complete their first guarantee, and that loan loss reserve has grown over the years. We've had several financial partners participate, going all the way back to Society, National City, Citibank, Cleveland Trust. So at a time where folks were really concerned about home repairs, it seemed like we had a lot of participation from our financial institutions, and that hasn't seemed to be the case as we keep going on when home repair is at its highest need, and we need these types of programs that we're all trying to get at. So many of the programs then and even now, not all homeowners meet the eligibility requirements, right? So with the help loan, great program, you know, everything about it, but you still have to qualify for the loan through the bank, right? Or your income could be too high for a lot of the grant programs, or too low to support an extra payment. As we move through the housing crisis, I'm sure a lot of people on this call who are homeowners, as well as the clients that we work with, equity was not present and didn't support any type of HELOC product. Not to mention your credit score, right? A medical bill could bring that score from where you need to be approved from a 620 down to a 605 or a 610. So now you're being turned away as well. Loans are always a risk. So when programs and banks analyze the applicant based on the numbers, you kind of get high declination rates or people left without an option to actually get what they need to be done. We take a look at the individual and dive a little bit deeper, look into the numbers, and really try to find that payment, that way, so this client can be able to fix this roof, fix the violations that they have, or do anything they can to be able to stay in the home and stay in the home safely. Because when we kind of go through our loan review process, again, it's done anonymously, where we're not looking up people's information, but our staff going to the loan review board really talks about the situation. Ms. Smith wound up helping her college daughter, with a credit card bill, and that made her credit score go down low. So then we, really take with a fine-tooth comb, go through their budget, look at, what they've been doing for the last 3 months. We may stretch out a loan a little bit longer to really try to meet their needs. And through this process, a personal connection between the team member as well as the homeowner develops, and they work together, like I said, not for each other, to get the repair done. Next slide, please. So like many of the other programs, participants must be an owner occupant. Currently, right now, we're still only running this program in Cleveland Heights. Eligible repairs, like Greg talked about, we're not trying to put in backsplashes or redoing kitchens, but for a place where we do have a vast CDBG funding for repairs, some repairs aren't HUD approved, right? If you live in Cleveland Heights or Euclid or South Euclid, garages aren't covered by grants, right? Driveways aren't covered by grants. Basements, unless there's health and safety with mold, they're not covered by grants. So this really kind of hits that niche of repairs that we found that really was able to layer the repairs that were able to be done through grants to other repairs. So one thing that's interesting about this program, the Challenge Fund, we have a loan loss reserve. So HRRC provides this guarantee. And when the program started, it was either a 40% guarantee or 100% guarantee. And the 40% allowed more leeway. When Greg was talking about, the availability to make more loans, when, someone defaults on a loan, if you have to pay 40% back versus 100% back, you're able to still, have a little bit more sustainability and longevity with the program. So that sliding scale between 40, well, it's not a sliding scale, but 40% or 100% has pretty much gone all the way up into about 2008. And like I mentioned before, loans are risky. And once we kind of hit that financial crisis in the late 2000s, it kind of made our lender tighten up a little bit. So as of right now, we're being asked to provide the 100% guarantee on all of our loans, which is something that we're working on to try to get more of on a sliding scale, but we'll go into that a little bit later. So our participants, kind of step by step how it goes, have a repair, they meet with our client, our team member, they go over intensive financial counseling, project support, project management. We kind of are literally like watching the whole project, making sure that the contractors are credible, sometimes using our list, which we have a very extensive database of contractors and who have evaluations from folks who have used them in the past. And we're really just trying to make sure we're managing. Hey, hasn't the contractor come on the day he said he was? Do you have a written bid? So no one's really getting taken advantage of. And after that, once the loan is approved, we get the funds. Like I said, we try to layer any type of other grant funds, client contribution. We disperse all the funds. And what's key about this is not the contractor is not paid until the client is satisfied and we're satisfied, meaning that they've corrected all of the violations or anything that needs to be done. So it really is remarkable to see. And when a homeowner is able to see the process, we're kind of setting them up for the future, right? Because not only are they getting assistance now, if they have a repair in the future, they understand the financial piece that goes to it, what they need to save for, how they can kind of contract that bit, and then, move from there. So next slide. And then we talk about the challenge fund by the numbers, right? So in 48 years, we've done 1,008 loans. And again, that's going to vary over the years. You figure 1973, when I trying to look for data, I think we were doing 1 to 2 loans a year. And 2005, 2008, we kind of didn't do too many. And then we can start to see the peak after 2011, when folks were really starting to kind of come out of that financial recession. Our average loan size is $5,142.63. We can go up to $10,000, but my board and I have been discussing going a little bit higher to 12 on some projects, just based on the client's ability to repay and the type of work that needs to be done. Our current exposure, meaning that if we had to pay back all of our loans right now, we would owe this $22,000. Right now, all of our loans are at 100%. So this goes to show as to how that 40% or even numbers in between 100% makes the program a lot more sustainable. Currently, our lending partner is Key Bank. 2011 is where we had our most loans at 26. Right now, we have 6 active loans. 2020, we weren't able to finance any loans due to the pandemic we're imagining. But we're looking to hopefully get more of those out. Repayment percentage. This is our big boast here. It seems like, with CHN Housing Capital, with that program being in existence in a year, it's great to have little to no defaults. With our program running for 48 years, we have a 94% repayment, meaning that the relationships we create with people are key. Right now, we don't have any delinquent loans, and that goes to the fact that we've been able to really, create these relationships. If a client gets behind, we contact them and we make sure that they get back on track. And then if they don't pay, we obviously pay on. And we've loaned between the years of 2005 and 2019, a little over $500,000. Next slide, please. So this is a project that was a challenge fund project. We got a new roof with gutters. We painted the home. The garage roof was actually painted and roofed, and just simply kind of showing how we can get a full home repair together. So next slide, please. So we talk about why the success, right? And the biggest reason is trust. We work closely, and when we talk about expanding, and I'll talk to a little bit about that, we really hire folks who not only understand the financial piece, not only understand repair work and how project management goes, but we also hire and employ folks who understand that we are working with folks who are low to moderate income or may have something come up, and this leaky roof is really keeping them up at night. So we're very intensive, where, like I said, a bank just looks at you at the numbers and rejects you or accepts you. We really are creating that relationship, and that trust is why the program has success. And a lot of people don't, especially if you drive through underserved neighborhoods in Cleveland, underserved suburbs, inner ring suburbs, people forget that homeowners care about getting their repair done. They care about the neighborhood, they care about their property values, and they honestly care about an agency that cares enough to help them keep their house in good repair, right? So they care when they can't make these payments. They care when one of our team is calling and saying, "Hey, Ms. Smith, you're defaulting," or "What's going on?" So for a lot of people who drive through these neighborhoods and say, the city is going down, and what are these folks going to do about it? They just need the resources. People care about their communities, and they care about their neighbors their neighborhoods and the property values. And we just need to make sure we extend the resources all of us have to make sure we're reaching out to them and providing them to them. So next slide. When I became executive director, my predecessor, Benjamin Fowler, had already been working with CHIPS Group Organize Ohio, other groups in VAPAC to kind of talk about a potential expansion. And we presented this to actually Greg's former employer, Ohio Savings, in 2016 initially to talk about expanding the program in South Euclid and Lakewood after Frank Ford's data kind of revealed how paltry the lending was by them in the area. We got all the way up, I think, Chip, right, to the Office of the Comptroller, having meetings, and then nothing. They see this program, or institutions see this program as a risk, right? But what's the risk when I'm an agency? I've gotten donations and funds to be able to repay these loans. I'm talking about how great and valuable this product is due to the relationships and taking the weight off of you. And if someone defaults, you get your money back. You get the service, you get to do everything. But a lot of institutions usually come back and say, well, there's this red tape and servicing and originating and this red tape. So we've really been trying to figure out ways as to how to expand it and how to alleviate that red tape many institutions have presented to us. So many thanks to my colleagues at VAPAC, the Cuyahoga County Housing Stakeholders Group, GCRC. When the county was shopping their county bank depository contract out, they asked for some recommendations from these stakeholders in regards to how this contract could, between the county and whomever financial institution, really kind of enhance the community experience, through this contract. And what came of that is they submitted these recommendations, and Cuyahoga County selected Key Bank in February to be able to hold that hold the contract. And what was interesting of those recommendations, Key adopted those recommendations as commitments in the contract. We can go to the next slide. And there were 13 of them. I've kind of just surmised some of them. Of this is some of the funds that Greg's group is able to do the down payment assistance, as well as some of the repair products. So we all saw this as a big win, right? We were finally seeing something concrete that was able to, hold our at-home bank, right, Key Bank, accountable for providing better opportunities for our community in the likes of, housing, home repair, et cetera. And then, I also saw it as a win, from a personal standpoint in regards to Home Repair Resource Center, being that they've been our lending partner for so many years. And in the recommendation, as you can see at the bottom, our advocates asked for Key Bank to extend its participation in the Challenge Fund. They actually state our name. If you go to the actual contract, it's number 8 in the contract. And we were very, very excited about this. And from that, the Cuyahoga County organized a Community Reinvestment Advisory Subcommittee chaired by Councilpersons Cornell Jones Jr. and Vice Chairwoman Cheryl Stevens, who was also Home Repair Resource Center's county council person. And it's a really great group. The community is comprised of mayors, council members, and staff, and housing advocates to kind of provide the oversight to see that these commitments are implemented and performance of the banks as they continue to operate in Northeast Ohio. And the Challenge Fund has been on their agenda from the 13 commitments. The committee as well as Key Bank has prioritized 3 of them. And the expansion in the Challenge Fund is the next one. Next slide. So, when you talk about 51 municipalities with a staff of 7, we really had to really think about how we were going to expand and, without diluting my product. That's one of the things I really talk really heavy with my team about. I want everyone to be able to interact with each client as if, they have that personal experience and they understand that. So, what we decided is in this initial expansion through the county contract, we would identify 11 zip codes based on, again, great data about underserved neighborhoods, middle neighborhoods, from Frank Ford. And we look to expand the Challenge Fund into Shaker Heights, Maple Heights, and the Cleveland neighborhoods of Bel Air, Puritas, Old Brooklyn, and Buckeye Woodhill. We look to scale up to about 35 to 50 loans in those areas outside of the loans that we already do in Cleveland Heights, and see how that works for 12 months, right? And to show that while we have other partners doing, other programs, and the county has expanded their program, not everybody can reach folks like we can and really give them that experience. So that's what our initial proposal was or is, and we are still working with the powers that be to kind of get this rolling. Next slide. Next slide. So we want to, when we expand, we have goals, right? And when we go to funders like Key, the county, we have other partners in enterprise, and we're working with, other organizations. We kind of see how we want to roll this out. So we, again, like I said, not dilute our product, but maximize the benefit for homeowners and the folks that we reach, and also kind of grow this so it can be a tool that all homeowners are able to use and without the county. So when we talk about capacity building and growth requests, we need to add staff. Like I said, I'm a staff of 7 full-time employees, only 4. So I need to, have some folks in-house and bring some folks on who understand our mission, understand the goal of this expansion, and really can devote their time on this. The sliding scale guarantee, like I said, as I mentioned before, the program would not be sustainable if each loan is required to have 100% guarantee, no matter how much money we receive. So as we grow in scale, we hope to be able to have with whomever we have as a lending partner, to be able to be based on the client's credit worthiness, to be able to slide between 40 and 100% to be able to maximize that loan loss reserve. We also need funds to add to the loan loss reserve if we're going to scale up our amount of loans. And like I know some of my colleagues are going to talk about, as well as some of the things that we do in Shaker Heights, we like to layer programs, right? So if we can have another pool of funds that homeowners can kind of have that same eligibility and criteria to be able to layer on with a challenge fund loan, we see that as going to be an opportunity to be able to maximize the benefit to the homeowner. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're working with Key Bank, County Council, housing entities, foundations, to kind of grow the program. Like you'll hear on the panel, and you've heard so many other niches, but we feel like we have this special niche where we're doing that whole project management piece, the financial piece, as well as the repair piece. So with that being said, I always like to thank Organize Ohio, Frank Ford, the folks at VAPAC, City of Cleveland Heights, because without them and have Cleveland Heights understanding what it takes to keep a community as diverse and as strong as it is in Cleveland Heights, you need to have an entity like Home Repair Resource Center. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me, stop at our website. And like I said, I'll be on my soapbox until we get this expanded and funded throughout the county. So thank you.
So any hands up, any questions? Incredible program. I just read Susie Kaiser's book, and there's a whole bunch of pictures in there of the original church group that launched this program with a vision of caring and social justice, and way before their time. I mean, what amazes me is this was Cleveland Trust back in the day. And so here we are, fast forward to Key Bank, and they just have been slow to get this thing expanded. This is a program that works. I mean, people need a roof. People need, a hot water heater, their porch repaired. I've never quite understood it, but maybe this will be the year after we get all the stuff with the police settled, we can move on to home repairs and get that resolved. But gosh, it's hard. Eileen's data about the denial rates are just unbelievable. So any questions, anybody? Put your hand up. Susan?
Yeah, hi. I'm with the Ludlow Association, and includes Shaker and in Cleveland. And Keisha, there is a need that we have in Shaker to have this program. And I'm wondering, what if we talk with the mayor involved, or who's involved in it presently that you're talking with, or other people are talking with to set it up? Or Colin, are you aware of anything?
Yeah, one thing I didn't mention, I was going to kind of let that Colin speak to that. So while Shaker Heights is involved in our expansion efforts, we are actually going to be servicing all of the home repair suite from Shaker Heights. And with that, we're going to add the challenge fund as a piece for residents of Shaker Heights outside of the full expansion. So we're really trying to hit, the areas that we know we've had success in. We've had MOU or Memo of Understanding with Shaker for about 4 years now, where we've been providing them with technical assistance, repair education classes. But once Colin got to his position there and knew the work we've done here, it almost seemed very easy to say, okay, why don't you take on the grants program so we can focus on our neighborhoods and community engagement. And we are looking to bring the challenge fund outside of our expansion directly to Shaker House based on our new form contract that starts this month. So more to come.
So it will be coming shortly.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Woohoo. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker started her career at the Home Repair Resource Center and took her great talent and ability to organize and get things off the ground over across that great divide to Cuyahoga and walked into Lakewood, Ohio with Lakewood Alive. So Allison, tell us about how the Pride program is working to help homeowners in Lakewood get repairs.
Sure thing, Chip, and thanks so much for the introduction. And it's truly an honor to be here and sit on the panel with all of the other panelists and be around all of you. So you are going to hear some of the same things that Keisha spoke about, and I will try to be not redundant, but I did start my career in housing at in Cleveland Heights at Home Repair Resource Center. I joined the team there in 2008 and stayed with Home Repair Resource Center until 2013, when I was then chosen to come over to Lakewood Alive in Lakewood and work to grow their housing outreach program. Catherine, if you wouldn't mind sharing the presentation, please. So when I joined the team in 2013, obviously I was coming off of my time in Cleveland Heights, and I learned so much from my time there. The importance of relationships and creating trust and really working one-on-one with residents. And that really, truly, my time at Home Repair Resource Center has set me up to be dedicated to serving low, moderate income people. And so while Keisha mentioned her soapbox is expanding the challenge fund, my soapbox is talking about affordability and health and safety. And so sorry, you're going to probably get tired of hearing about it. But I'm going to talk to you about our housing outreach program and ways that we layer resources, as well as our Pride Fund, which is the loan guarantee program that we got off the ground in 2019. Next slide, please. So Lakewood Alive was founded in 2004 under the Main Street premise, our downtown district, and really started as an economic development organization that worked to bring small businesses into our downtown district. In 2009, right after the housing crisis hit, Lakewood understood the tie between small businesses and residential needs. So obviously, if we don't have businesses that people want to shop at, it makes our community less vibrant. If we don't have good housing stock, our community is less vibrant. So in 2009, the organization started the Housing Outreach Program, where they really truly started by focusing on owner occupants and bringing resources to them to keep their homes in good repair. So in 2013, when I joined, I really focused on repair education and creating a comprehensive approach, getting away from only focusing on volunteer projects to really bring home repair education to the forefront, empowering residents, encouraging them, and being there along their side, helping them get their home repairs completed, saving them time, money, and tears. But truly what we have found throughout this is relationship building is what has gotten us to where we are today. We tend to be the organization that never says no. We are the organization of last resort. Other people have tried to get things done, have tried working with clients, trying to find solutions. and they just haven't been successful, or they don't have the time to dedicate to it. So Lakewood Alive steps in, and whether that's good or bad, we are the people who never say no. Next slide. So our housing outreach program, as I mentioned, started in 2009, and this is our current offering of programs. So we have our home repair education, where we meet with residents one-on-one. We also have our Knowing Your Home virtual workshop series, which is free and open to anyone of any community. Right now it's virtual. You can check us out on our website, lakewoodalive.org/knowingyourhome. And we have recorded workshops that you can check out. And then our series for the 2021 season, we have 14 workshops. And then we also assist with contractor and project management, helping people starting at point A to getting to the end and making sure that they get it done correctly in a workmanlike manner and affordably as possible. We also do aging in place assessments. That's free of charge for our residents. And then we do have a small grant associated with it to do some low-hanging fruit improvements so that we can keep people in their home as long as possible, as safely as possible. We do have the Lakewood Toolbox. It is our tool lending library, similar to Cleveland Heights. We don't have the robust library as Home Repair Resource Center does yet. We have about 60 tools, but we are working to grow it. Right now we have about 60 active members. You can see it. It's housed in a shipping container at the Screw Factory in Birdtown, which is one of our low moderate income census tracts. We also have the Pride Fund, which I'll talk about, and then our volunteer project program, where pre-COVID we were doing 50 volunteer projects a year, getting donated labor and reduced cost materials, where the homeowner would pay 20% of the material cost. Lakewood Alive picks up 80% of the cost, again, removing barriers for making home improvements. So part of what we are able to offer, so while low dollar loans are very important to us, we try to, for those who do not have the ability to pay for a contractor to come out and do work, supplement with some of our donated labor and reduce cost materials. Next slide. So who we serve. So this is a beautiful photo of Lakewood. We serve 52,000 people in 5.5 square miles. The mission of the housing outreach program is to ensure health and safety for all of our residents. We are dedicated to every single person in this community. As I mentioned, in 2009, our primary focus was owner occupants. In about 2014, we started serving both renters and owner occupants because their quality, everyone's quality of housing should be a right. They should have amazing quality of life in their housing stock. And so we work very hard to ensure that we provide as many resources as possible to, again, ensure that health and safety. So we have 11 low moderate income census tracts in our community. 51% of our housing stock, so that's 12,600 one and two family homes. 51% of them are rental and 50% of them are owner occupied. And it's historically always been that way. We've always been 51% rental, 50% owner occupied. We currently have a housing shortage and we have an affordability issue. Our housing values are through the roof, which is wonderful. I'm not trying to say anything about that. It's great to be in a thriving community, of course. But again, our focus is ensuring affordability, trying to keep our low moderate income residents in our community. It is because of them that Lakewood is as great as it is. And so we want to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion of all. So we do put a primary focus on low moderate income people, and we are pushing consistently to try to put in affordability measures here in the community. So we are worried about our low moderate income residents, and we are worried about the housing prices because, you know, we all were around in 2008 when the housing crisis happened. We're worried about those values and the people who have those mortgages. So we're hoping that something happens to help lower the costs a little bit. Many of our residents, as I mentioned, we are serving primarily low moderate income people. 86% of the people we serve are low moderate income. And of those, 51% are seniors, so 62 or older. And then about 49% of those folks are female heads of household. We on average serve about 700 people per year, and that's just their non-duplicated. So 700 people, and then we serve them roughly with about 3 interactions. So about 2,100 interactions with our team. Our housing outreach program has 3 full-time staff members to serve the entire community. Next slide. So here's one of our families that we have served. This family was not able to get a loan. They were not able to get a new hot water tank. And we were able to work with them through our program to help them get a hot water tank. They did not have the budget and they are happy. They were able to finally take warm showers. But these folks have lived in their home. Eileen on the left, this has been a household that has been in her family for multiple generations. And, you know, we see that in a lot of our clients, multiple generations who are trying to make ends meet. They are on fixed incomes, and it's really hard for them to figure out how they're going to pay for things because taxes are high. Their housing mortgages are high. So they're trying to expand their budget as much as possible to figure out how to pay all of their bills. We get a lot of our clients through referrals through the Lakewood Building Department. So we do have a code compliance program. Houses are evaluated in Lakewood once every 4 years, and they are evaluated on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being good, 4 being a potential teardown candidate. Just as in Cleveland Heights, we're trying to preserve our housing stock as much as possible, and we want to keep as many historic properties standing as possible. So try to prevent demolition as much as we possibly can. We also work with the municipal court. They have a diversion program where if you are an owner occupant and you are making progress on your violations, you can go to court without having any fees and also not risk having a minor misdemeanor on your record if you are not able to get your issue taken care of. So Judge Carroll here has been very, very thoughtful and kind to our residents who are just trying to make ends meet and do the best that they can. So the diversion program has been a really great program for the city. We also hear from neighbors, family members, and we're often the call, like I said, of last resort. So we are there, you know, they've tried many other ways. They just don't know how to get X, Y, Z accomplished. So they call Lakewood Alive. Next slide. So how we serve. I'm going to talk about the Pride Fund next, but I did want to go over the ways that we try to layer our services. So City of Lakewood, just like Cleveland Heights, is an inner ring suburb and an entitlement community. So we get funds directly from the federal government to the city, and Lakewood Alive does receive some of those funds to put services out into the community. The city also has their own pot of money where they have low interest loans, grant dollars, and rebate programs. Those programs are focused on low moderate income people. And we really try to layer as many of those together as possible to maximize the reduction that someone has to pay out of pocket. So the city has low interest loans that have monthly payments, and it's anywhere from, you know, $2,000 up to $25,000. They'll put them into a monthly payment that works for their budget, which is fabulous. It's important for people to know that there are low interest loan options out there, especially if they're not conventional loan recipients, meaning they can't walk into the bank and get a loan. The city tends to have a more flexible standard in order to get loans into the hands of folks. So we really appreciate those low interest monthly loan payments for folks who need them. They also have a deferred loan option for people who are 65 years or older, again, up to $25,000, which is coming in handy. So the average amount of loan dollars that we are seeing going out are usually between $5,000 and $12,000. So roof replacements, exterior painting, porch repairs, plumbing, electrical updating and upgrades just due to health and safety concerns. And so that's a lot of money for anyone, really, you know, just to fork out $7,000. So we try to find as many resources as we possibly can. The city of Lakewood turned over their Operation Paintbrush program to Lakewood Alive in 2009. So I don't have that on here, but we do have the Paint Lakewood program, which is a grant program up to $4,500 off the top of the cost for exterior painting. Something I like to point out is that COVID-19, as well as the economy, has really increased the cost of home repairs. We're seeing an average of exterior painting go up 20% over the past 18 months. So we have actually increased our grant amount. The highest amount used to be $3,500. Now it's $4,500 to meet those increasing and rising costs, again, to make these home repairs affordable, removing barriers. All contractors are booked up. People are getting frustrated. So really, again, the relationships are essential in order to make any of these things successful, whether it's a loan guarantee loan or a loan through the city. Lakewood Alive acts as that person who handholds throughout the entire process. We are there as a support. We are not there to do for, we are there to do with. It's important for people to understand that being a homeowner is difficult and there are things that happen. And so we need to be planners, but there are people out there who can help them get through the process. We also work with obviously referring folks to the Help Loan through Huntington and Key Bank. And then we have our, excuse me, our Pride Fund. Next slide. So the Pride Fund is our low guarantee program. So we are the loan of last resort. We are required to guarantee our loan up to 100%. Our banking partner is First Federal Lakewood, and they are an amazing partner, and they believed in us. I know that we're kind of short on time, but we started fundraising for the Pride Fund in 2014. So our 10-year gala event, we decided that we were going to pull the trigger, and we were going to raise $125,000 to make this program happen. I would have probably told you that it would have taken 2 years to get the program up and running, but like most stories you've heard today, it took 5 years to get the program up and running. And that's because, the money was there. We had money sitting in the bank. We hit our goal, but trying to find a banking partner was challenging. Again, to Keisha's point, we were literally guaranteed, there's no risk to the bank. We're guaranteeing the loans. We understood that it would probably have to be 100%. We were prepared to do that, but figuring out how to get banks to think outside of their box, think outside of the computer program that you put the information in and then the person gets denied because they're not creditworthy at the time. We had to get people to think outside of the box, and you could tell them, and there's no risk, and it's so great, and think of all the great people you're going to help, and all the communities and all the neighborhoods, and how wonderful this is going to be. Just, oh, it sounds too risky. It's not something we can do right now. So it took us 5 years. We did release the Pride Fund in 2019. We do primarily serve residents who are 80% or less of area median income, but we do go up to 120%. Our funds came from individual donors, corporations, financial partners, and the City of Lakewood. The City of Lakewood has been with us by our side since 2014. They understood how important it was to believe in our neighbors. And that's why we chose the name Pride Fund. Lakewood is a very prideful community. We support one another, we step up, we give back. And so we decided to name it the Pride Fund because of that. We believe in one another, we believe in each other, and individuals gave money to help back these loans. So we started in 2019. We have had one loan success. I wish I could sit here and tell you we had 25 loans or 30 loans, but again, the economy changed from 2014 to 2019. So we hit the ground, but it wasn't running. It's been a nice steady walk, and I'm okay with that. Let me see here. We'll get to the challenges in just a second. So we've had one loan, and it actually has been paid off. And this is a very big success story for us. Our very first loan was folks who had a lead-poisoned child. They were over income for the Lead Safe Cuyahoga program. And so they were basically told that they had to spend $15,000 to make improvements to keep their child safe. And they had nowhere else to turn. They were, again, over income, so the city couldn't help them. They had filed bankruptcy. It was a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So, their debt had been wiped, but no bank was willing to touch them. So they came to Lakewood Alive, and to me, it was like just sent from heaven above. This was like the best person that we could serve, because lead poisoned child, have the community come around, support them, and get these funds out there to protect this child and our community member. So we were able to get it through, but they needed 15,000. Initially, we thought we were only going to lend 8. We were able to bump it to 10, and they were able to get a family loan for the remainder of the $5,000. It went swimmingly, everything happened, and then they had a change in family circumstance, and they decided to move out of Lakewood. And so it was supposed to be a 5-year term on the loan, and they ended up paying it off in 2 years. And so we've had one loan, and it's been paid off, so we have a 100% payback rate. So that's pretty amazing. We have actually turned down 3 other people, and we have one person who's going through the process. So if we can go to the next slide. Our challenges. So as I mentioned, we are the loan of last resort. That doesn't mean that we're going to put someone into a loan product that's not going to work for them. We are not going to put someone into a loan product that's going to cause them to go into further debt and further disrepair because they can't make the actual loan payment. So 3 additional folks have applied, and their budget has just not allowed them to take on any additional debt. Some of them have had bankruptcy, and we weren't able to get that additional debt put on with the trustee. They're in Chapter 13. So we are constantly working with them, again, looking at their budget, sending them to HUD-approved counseling agencies to go through counseling so that they can come back to us. And as Keisha mentioned, every on-time payment will help this person. It will help them get back on track, so the next time they're ready to make a repair, they'll be able to do that on their own. But we do not feel comfortable saddling people with additional stress and debt. So as hard as it is, we do send them to our partners, similar to Home Repair Resource Center, ESOP, CHN partners, so that they can get that necessary counseling so that they can make informed decisions on the future of their home. So some of the other challenges is the loan amount. As I mentioned, costs of home repairs are increasing exponentially. Supply and demand is a big problem right now. Contractors are booked until the end of the season, and it's only April. And so costs are going up. And so we need to be a little bit more flexible with our dollar amount, and we are open to that and considering it. As I mentioned, credit challenges. We are the loan of last resort. We just cannot force people into this program if it's not going to be a success for them. And sometimes there are multiple issues that need to be addressed, and those costs are just really, really high. So trying to figure out how we can layer the resources to make things more affordable is something that we are always looking for and evaluating. Next slide. So as I mentioned already, our CDBG funds are very important here in Lakewood. They help us focus on our low moderate income people. Again, those grants and low interest loans are essential. They are what are allowing us to keep our homes in good repair and stay around for another 100 years. They allow us to not be one size fits all. And the city is very open and understanding and flexible. Obviously, we have to follow federal guidelines. We're not messing around with those, but they are flexible in terms of repayments and loan amounts so that we can get these home repairs completed, focusing on health and safety. Lakewood Alive, again, focuses on the resident. The city has the money. We're the ones who help them get to the finish line. We spend the time with them. We hold their hands, and we really work to layer all of those resources. Next slide. So I'm at the end of my slides here, and I really just want to reinforce that if this is something that you're thinking about doing, or if you will be part of the hopeful expansion with Home Repair Resource Center, the repair education and the relationship building is essential in order to make these programs work. And then also there needs to be creative ways to get those dollars out into the community. They have to be flexible and have partners who are willing to think outside of the box, because health and safety is the #1 priority. We don't want people having holes in their roof, but if there are too many hoops to jump through and too many hurdles to overcome, it's not going to happen. And our clients will be living in uninhabitable spaces, as well as our housing stock will go into disrepair, which will be really detrimental to our communities. So thank you. Happy to take any questions if you have any.
Well, I guess we'll get to our final speaker, Colin, who is waiting carefully and thoughtfully there for his presentation. Colin's with the city of Shaker Heights and is working on home repair there, and previously was for CRS, right? I guess so.
Correct.
So, okay, go ahead. Start up, Colin.
All right, Susan, this is for you if you've stuck around to the bitter end, and anyone else who has as well. Catherine, if you could pull my slides up, that'd be great. So good afternoon, everyone. I'll keep it very brief, and anyone is welcome to reach out to me afterwards. My name is Colin Compton. I'm the neighborhood and housing specialist for the city of Shaker Heights. Keisha talked about niches as it relates to home repair assistance, and my small niche today is to talk about the various home repair grant programs that the city offers as direct funding for repair needs. And additionally, as Keisha mentioned, these programs in 2021 are going to be administered by Home Repair Resource Center, along with a suite of repair classes, access to the tool library, and more. Next slide. So a brief overview of our programs. The city has 3 recurring grant programs that are offered every year. Very briefly, the exterior maintenance grant is for correcting exterior violations. It's for up to $2,500 and can be used once per inspection cycle, which is roughly once every 5 years. The senior safety grant is for emergency repairs or accessibility improvements. This is up to $500 and can address projects that we've talked about: roof repairs, plumbing, electrical, handrails, and lighting. And then we additionally also have a paint program which supplies paint and materials for DIY correction of exterior violations. These programs are really essential to the city in helping our owner occupants address their most their exterior code violations, their worst emergency repairs, and more. And especially in our LMI census tracts and majority minority neighborhoods, where it's documented, including with Eileen's research, where homeowners face higher loan denial rates and less access to credit. Without these programs, more of those homeowners would turn to either deferring maintenance or, as someone else mentioned, turning to potentially predatory payment plans. These grant programs can be used in tandem with one another. And for larger projects, we also use layer them and use them as match funding for other regional and nonprofit programs in the area that residents are using. So where Allison said her program was the option of last resort, I look at this as first resort. Whenever possible, if we can help our residents avoid taking on additional debt and get their most important repairs taken care of, this is the option. Next slide. And then in addition to the yearly recurring grants we offered, I wanted to touch briefly on this model block grant. This is something that I piloted in 2019 in our Moreland neighborhood. The concept here was basically to combine financial repair assistance with an incentive for adjoining neighbors to participate in the program as a group. So it resulted in both physical impacts in the form of street visible repairs and social impacts via connecting neighbors that often stated that they had little contact with one another. And the financial incentive here was a stepped funding match program where if homeowners applied by themselves, they could get a 50-50 match. Homeowners applying with one neighbor could get 70% of their project paid for. And then homeowners applying with 2 or more neighbors could get up to 90% of the project paid for via the grant. And that grant amount maxed out at $3,000. And what's different with this program is, unlike our recurring grant programs, this had no income restrictions. And that was specifically to address what I often refer to as sort of the missing middle of repair assistance. Someone else mentioned this, households that make too much money to qualify for traditional grant funding, but they don't make enough money to find a good lending option or take on additional debt. And we saw this program as really catalytic in addressing proactively addressing porch rebuilds, replacing roofs, and even doing things like landscaping. Next slide. This is simply an example of an applicant group for the Model Block Grant to show you how this program rolled out. This consisted of 5 houses. you'll see that rental properties were not eligible, but owner occupants could essentially skip over that and still apply together. And we took that same approach for vacant lots as well. And this also highlights the really targeted impact of this program in addressing really visible projects in a concentrated area. Next slide. I have 2 more slides, people. So what's some data on the model block program? We piloted this for 1 year before the pandemic. We hope to continue, but in 2019, we completed 20 projects. 75% of those applied with their neighbors as a group, and 25% applied alone. As I noted previously, the financial reinvestment leverage through this program was really significant, with almost $80,000 in repair work and 60% of that coming from the city and 40% coming from residents. Next slide. And then lastly, here's some cumulative data on all our city-funded programs. Between 2017 and 2019, we served about 71 households. The average grant amount per household was about $2,600. And then looking at demographic usage of these programs, you'll see that in Shaker, senior-headed households and single homeowner households are a strong majority of applicants. I think that's going to be common outside of Shaker as well. And it really shows the need for specialty capital and extensive technical assistance, especially for our senior residents that are tackling projects often for the first time by themselves. And then as Allison mentioned, Shaker also has a code enforcement program. And as we know, unfortunately, violations that aren't corrected after a number of years often head towards municipal court. And in looking at data from 2017 and 2018, I found that almost half of our grant projects resolved either an existing court case or an imminent court case. And I think this is another important element to consider as it relates to programming such as this. And next slide. That's all. I'm available for questions anytime. Thanks for sticking with us.
Well, lots of great information. I guess one of the common themes is if you're an integrated neighborhood or a low-income neighborhood, you're going to have a hard time getting a bank repair loan. So all these programs really add up to helping people gain access to a roof. I love the picture of the woman standing next to the water heater. That's the best picture I've ever seen, actually. I love that. Anyhow, much thanks to all of our speakers. Thoughtful, good topics, good information. Eileen, great that you were able to do your research and we had the practical application of it here in Greater Cleveland. And coming up in our next forum, May 19th, is going to be the ever popular State of Ohio budget, which has always a lot for money and housing, community development dollars. For people who don't drive down there or go virtually, this is big money for Cuyahoga County. And so we're going to watch it very carefully in terms of dollars that are going out. Again, much thanks to all of our speakers. Thanks to all of our sponsors. Thanks to all of you for participating. We appreciate it very much and take care all. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.